He spoke about immigrants. Are you an immigrant? Who are you?
Yes.
What?
I'm just
Would you like to tell us a story or a poem or a talk?
Well, I'm just happy to be back for another Covey. This is our 5th Covey, and some of my family came with me this time. But I have a little story about 2 little cottages out in the middle of Connemara, and they had 1 milk cow between the 2 families. And the cow got sick and died, and they were in bad shape, so they didn't know what to do. So one fella said, I have a brother in Cashel, he has a couple of cows, maybe he'd let us have one. So they called him, and he said, you can have a cow. So they got the cow delivered out to Connemara. So it was great. The cow was given lots of milk. So then they started thinking, maybe we should buy a bull, and they could breed, and we'll have calves, and we're bound to get a milk cow out of this, and we wouldn't have to worry anymore. So they bought a bull, and they put the bull in with the cow out in the pasture. And every time the bull got near the cow was kicking his back legs up, hitting the bull, and had nothing to do with the bull. And this was going on for weeks. And they said, what are we going to do? And one fellow said, well, there's an old retired vet out in Clifton. Maybe we'll go see him and see what he says. So they went to Clifton and talked to the vet. And he said, God, I never heard of anything like that. The bull and the cow always mate. And he's scratching his head and, Jesus, he said, I don't know what's wrong. He said, by any chance, did the cow come from Cashel? And they said, that's amazing. How could you come to that? Oh, he said, my wife's from Cashel.
I have a special request for you. I want you to introduce yourself, because a lot of people, not say a lot, some people won't know who you are, and tell us where you are.
I'm in Blouser.
Where you are, where you've come from, where you were born, when you left. Just give us a little synopsis of it.
I'm Frank Navin. I lived on Mill Street. I emigrated in 1949. I went to New Jersey first, and then I enlisted in the United States Air Force when the Korea thing started. And I met my wife in Chicago, and we got married in 1954. It'll be 59 years this week, this year. And actually, I think that's a miracle. But anyway, that's all. So we come back, or some of us come back every 2 years for the Covey thing. So this year, Maureen is my oldest daughter. Sue is my youngest daughter. My oldest boy, Patrick, is in the back there, and his 2 daughters, Anna and Sarah, and one of my stepdaughters, Julie, is back there, and her friend, Mike. So
Granddaughter, that's the
granddaughter, yes. Well, I'm old, you know, I'm 85, so what are you going to do? Anyway, so that's, you know, my family, and we're all living happy. I'm living in Half Moon Bay, California. It's about 25 miles south of San Francisco on the ocean. And I was a firefighter for 20 years and a plasterer, so I retired from both jobs, one in 81 and one in 91, and I just keep fishing, and I volunteer with the sheriff in Half Moon Bay, California. I've been doing that for about 12 years. I work with the fire district in Half Moon Bay, and I keep busy, and I look forward every year to the Covey thing. I lived in Chicago for 30 years, and I had served 4 years in the United States Air Force and 1 year in Korea, and I served an apprenticeship in the plastering business for 4 years in 1954. And 61, I joined the fire department, worked on my days off plastering, and I retired in 81 from that and moved to San Francisco and went to work for a contractor out there. His father happened to be from Galway, and I retired from that in 91, and I got involved in the fire district out where I was living and served 20 years on the board of directors. And I just keep busy, do a lot of fishing on the ocean for salmon, and last week I had a 22-pounder, which...
Did you bring them in, Jim?
I beg your pardon?
Did you bring them home?
Yeah, it's sitting in the back of the car. I hate to open the bag yet because it could be smelly. So that, I lived south of San Francisco, about 20 miles in a smaller town, something like Westport. And the weather is a lot like Westport, except we don't get that much rain, but the temperature is usually maybe 68 or 70. It never gets the heat like Southern California. And what did you say?
I want you to talk for a second or a minute about Korea.
Oh, Korea. I went to Korea in June of 1952. I happened to be a flight engineer on a cargo plane that was called C-124 Globemaster. It was for the Korean airlift. And we flew troops back and forth from Japan to Korea. We brought troops from India back to Korea, and we delivered supplies all over the Pacific Ocean, Okinawa, Guam, Iwo Jima, and the war ended in, or the conflict they called it, in June of '53, and then I returned and I was stationed down in Miami, Florida International Airport training reservists in the Air Force, and I was discharged in 1954. Went back to Chicago and married my wife, Mary Jo,